I believe that portraiture is probably one of the most challenging genres in art. Its subtlety and detail creates an intense experience that at some points can even make us consider our own mortality. Pinar Yolacan's work especially and successfully does this, yet it is still able to take us out of our own experiences and go into the concepts that she works in, some of which include the ideas working with femininity, religion, violence, sexuality, and much more. Pinar Yolacan was born in Turkey in 1981. She studied fashion at the Central St. Martin's School of Art and Design and Fine Art, and also Fine Art Media at the Chelsea School of Art before graduating Cooper Union with the BFA in 2004. She is shown in galleries and museums around the world in both group and solo exhibitions in places like Rivington Arms and PS1. Pinar's work was published in a book, Portrait Now, and it was published by the Natural Portrait Gallery in London. Her work has been in publications like New York Times, Art Review, Rolling Stone, and ID. And next month, Pinar will be in a group exhibition at the Witterling Gallery in Stockholm, Sweden. So without any further ado, may I present to you Pinar Yolacan. Pinar?
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Pinar. Thanks a lot for coming tonight. I'm basically just going to go through the series of works that I've done over the 10 years, I guess, and just tell you a bit more about like my process and the photographs. So this is what you see on the screen is the first, I guess, series that's been shown and published widely in the U.S. and I guess around the world. It's called Perishables, and it's a series of 16 portraits of I guess Caucasian women that are like around ages 55 to 70. It's the first I guess series of work that I did that I used photography where I really was able to like use that medium, I guess, in a sort of a professional sense, because a lot of my work actually has to do with sort of impermanence, and the materials that I use, such as meat and organic materials, I mean, I was very much interested in the idea of working with these materials as like sculptures or impermanent things. So I actually never thought of my work as taking the form of a photograph, but I mean, they ended up as photographs because I had to document what I was working on, and I was really actually quite bad at taking photos, and so I had to I mean, when I graduated from Cooper Union and when I was studying at Cooper Union, I mainly studied photography, and that's when it all came together in terms of working with materials that were like perishable, and just also using the idea of like performance, and then documenting my work, which finally took the form of photography, and in this particular project, portraiture. So I'm going to move through the images. So this is I mean, what the women were wearing are garments that are made out of like meat. Like in this piece, it's chicken skin. In this one, it's tripe. And as you can see, I was shooting in like 35mm format when I first started like photographing these, because I was really thinking about them as women wearing these garments, just almost as a performance. Like I wanted to see how they interacted with it, and how they moved in it, and their facial expressions. I wasn't particularly interested in capturing them as portraits, so I was shooting a lot of 35mm. And it took me like about 3 years to finalize this project, as I was going through, finding out how to find the models, how to make the garments so that they don't rot, or how do I preserve these, and finally how do I make the photographs better so that they can, other people can look at it without being distracted about the technicalities of it. This is a woman. She's like wearing a testicle necktie, and the garments that I bought the garments that the fabric that the women are wearing are like secondhand from secondhand stores. Some of them I made myself because I studied fashion actually prior to studying art. But some of them, you know, I bought them from secondhand stores, flea markets. And the garments are supposed to reflect this kind of idea of, I guess, Victorian period. That's why I used a lot of ruffles, and just, I think that I'm particularly fascinated by that period because I guess that was one period in time when the woman, you know, the female body was just adorned with all these like really constricting garments like corsetry and all that stuff, and also the way that the women, I guess, had to carry themselves, I guess in Victorian England, sort of came with like this very particular set of mannerism that I was very fascinated with because I moved to England when I, you know, to study fashion when I was 17, and all I could observe was this kind of history, and so. The elderly women combined with the meat, it actually has a lot to do with this archetype of like the queen mother or Queen Victoria sort of icon. So that's why I particularly went for models who were like, you know, who are ages between 55 to 70. And when the women, a lot of these were shot. I mean, two of the images were shot in England, but the rest were shot in New York. And when I was doing the castings, I was just going through like all 9 ads, putting ads on Craigslist and newspapers like Show Business. And a lot of women who responded to me were people from like you know, show business actually. So a lot of them happened to be actresses and worked in theater, or just people who were like sort of flower kids that just had that kind of past where they interacted in like with a lot of artists, or were like in their performances or in their artworks and stuff. So it actually turned out to be quite, like, to my surprise, it turned out to be much of an easier process to find models, and it was actually great working with a lot of them because they were really great characters, and it really was more of like a collaboration. So I wasn't actually directing the subjects to you know, to pose in any particular way, but I was really just kind of watching them as they were modeling or like moving in this garment, and just and I was just like documenting how they basically carried it. This is a these are testicles. These are stomachs, but I think they're like pig stomachs. So a lot of this, I mean, all of it, I saw them myself, and I keep them like in a cooler when I'm working, to make sure that they are preserved. But I mainly, I mean, when I was doing this project, I would make the garments the day of the shoot. So I would, you know, make everything in the morning or the night before, and then I would shoot in the morning and just throw the garments. So the garments themselves, they're never exhibited, or they're not like anything to be shown or be preserved. They're just for the photograph. This is another series that I did right after I finished Perishables. It's called Maria, and this series was shot in Bahia in Brazil. I actually got a scholarship, or rather a fellowship, to go do this residency there. But I was planning on the project right after I finished. Perishables, and just doing all kinds of research. So when I got the fellowship, I went to Bahia, and it's an amazing and very interesting place. I don't know if any of you have been to Brazil, or this is in northeastern Brazil, but it has a lot of the Afro-Brazilian culture. I mean, it's basically 99% black, and it has a very interesting like combination of cultures in terms of like Portuguese and then the natives. Then you have like the Yoruba culture that comes with the black population, and it's just a really fascinating place basically. And so so I continued working on this series there, but I just had no idea how it was all going to work out in terms of approaching models and speaking to them, and how I could actually explain them what I was doing. But I had a couple of people that were helping me that were at the residency, And so they sort of helped me go through small villages, and just we did a lot of street casting, basically just speaking to people and just asking them very straightforwardly. You know, explaining them I'm an artist and this is what I'm doing. And I did get a lot of subjects that way, and it actually, again, like turned out to be much easier than I thought, and it was really interesting to work with them, also. And I was really fascinated by like I said, the culture. A lot of the meat that I use here is placenta, which is something like that I found in the market there. There's like a really big sort of a market that you can go and find all kinds of things in terms of meat and vegetables, fruits, and also a lot of things for religious sacrifice kind of stuff, like for voodoo and candomblé sort of practice. And so it was a great place for me to go and shop and get materials from. These are all shot in a sort of a studio setting. A lot of my work has to do with actually the process of it, so very little actually happens inside the studio other than taking the portraits, like in terms of doing all the research with meat, doing all the conceptual research as far as going through images, you know, looking at all kinds of archives or photographs and stuff. But the actual picture does happen in a studio that I just sort of like put together wherever I am, wherever I travel. It's basically a small room with just like a seamless background or a piece of fabric in the back. And as far as the lighting is concerned, here it's like I used strobe lights because I was really interested in how all of these materials would you know, show their texture with strobe lighting, with flash lighting, because I wanted everything to be quite dark, and I just wanted to almost make the strobe, you know, make the image using the colors and everything that the strobe was going to reveal, that light from the flashes were going to reveal. So I was really interested in playing with light in both of the series, actually. In the previous series, I used daylight because I thought it just you know, felt nicer with like light coming from a window. But with this one, I was really interested in like using strobe and just experimenting with that kind of light, just sort of flashing on all these different types of meat, dark colors especially. And from here, I'm gonna move on to the other series. And could we adjust the light actually just a little bit so I can see? Okay. What? Yes. But yeah, it's the first one that you picked actually. No, it's the. Okay, so this is the third series that I'd like to talk about. It's called Items. So after Brazil, I was asked to do this like piece for an exhibition in France, and it was just more like a kind of a I guess, specific thing where they asked me to like produce work about Turkey or about Istanbul, and I wasn't really interested because I don't really work with cities. I guess I was, or like in a rural, I mean, in a city context. I wasn't really interested in like the issues that came with like the city. So again, I was interested in like portraits, and I was really drawn to a lot of these women that that actually lived in the town that my mother lived, which is called Çanakkale. And here, actually, my research was, I guess, more drawn to like archaeology, and I was really interested in like Greek friezes that are especially like in this town called Aphrodisias in south of Turkey, and so I produced a series, just based on these like Roman, Greco-Roman friezes that are consisting of like human kind of expressions, and then just made the hair pieces, head pieces with fruits, just kind of as like fruit garlands. So the images are all meant to like be shown together. This is part of the research actually. I wasn't quite meant to show this, but these are the friezes that I'm referring to, and so I guess we have to go this way. Yes. And these are the images that are in the series. And these women are farmers. A lot of people ask me like who they are, and they're basically, again, it was the casting process were very similar to what I was doing in Brazil. So it was like street casting again, and so I asked a lot of the women that I ran into like in the market, and they were, majority of them were farmers, and it was kind of tough to ask like them, I guess. I think this was one challenge that I had, to just trying to explain, that the uses of the image and what exactly I was trying to achieve and stuff like that. I didn't really quite have that problem, surprisingly, in like Brazil, nor here. But it was a bit of a challenge there. But but a lot of the women, again, like I think, kind of enjoyed the process of it. I was really fascinated by their facial features and it turned out to be a series that I did. It dates 2008. And I'm just going to move on to actually the other, the next. Okay, so this series is called Mother Goddess. It's 2009, and I also shot this in Turkey, and this is like right after I shot the Ida series. And the ideas here are very similar to, I guess, or the research rather is very similar to Ida, because as I was shooting portraits and going through these like small villages and shooting a lot of the women, I was noticing their body types, and at the time I was also researching all these little statuettes that were like pre-Neolithic Mother Goddess statuettes. And I found like their body types really similar, and I wanted to work with them, not just focusing on the portraits, but basically on their bodies, and I wanted to make them look like statuettes. So I did a couple of experimentations and ended up like using jumpsuits basically to sort of make them look like these kind of objects, but at the same time give like a quality of maybe a stone, or like in this particular image I was trying to reflect on, I was trying to make it look like obsidian, this like really dark black stone, and just also using props, like different props, as in this image, like she has pipes, like she has these like pipes around her arms. So I was really interested in like making them like look very sculptural, but yet there are people in them, and they're real women. So these are all basically jumpsuits that are made out of like different fabrics, like mesh, spandex, etc. We can move on to actually the last series. Okay, so this is the last series that I'd like to share with you guys. It's called Like a Stone, and it's continuing on the theme of the Mother Goddess, except I'm working like directly with the women's bodies without actually sort of like covering them, and they're just meant to, I guess, look like statues. I'm painting the women's bodies with latex here, and also applying fabric on top of them to give it like, I guess, yeah, like some kind of a texture. And just also like abstracting the body. So you're not, maybe, sorry, these are meant to be here. Okay, here. Like here, she's wearing a jumpsuit that's like mesh, like a cotton mesh jumpsuit. And there's latex, she's painted with latex, liquid latex. This is also very similar. It's also very painterly, like kind of like Jenny Saville or Lucian Freud. I mean, I was really kind of also looking at like the idea of the nude in painting and stuff. This is plaster. And this is paint, actually. And this is actually the end of the sort of the presentation. I know I'm pretty quick, but I want to get questions because a lot of my process, I think, has to do with like all these sort of ideas that I don't really like to just, I guess, or I'm not really quite good at just like talking about it straight away, but I really like it when people ask these questions and then there's more of a conversation about the images and I guess different bodies of work in general and my practice in general. Yes.
In the first series, is that on?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
What did you say, the Victorian, were you going for a Victorian reference? I forgot what you said, or I didn't get that straight.
Yeah, basically, I was trying to kind of, I mean, I was casting particularly women that were like aged between 55 to like about 70 and Caucasian, and I was really looking, you know, for the kind of queen, you know, Queen of England sort of archetype. And the reason to that, I mean, I think that in a lot of the works that I do, it's actually, I do end up working with very specific groups of people, but they're like each time it's someone or like a group that's that I find that I'm in that's like different to me. I think that's like a way of processing them, you know, somehow. And so that was one particular series when I first moved to England that I did that, you know, carried that reference with it. The use of skin, because a lot of people ask me about meat, like why do you use meat or what does it mean? And I think that the way that I use meat at that time had a lot to do with just almost as like a metaphor for a second skin, you know, like carrying the second identity on you. And so, you know, in relation to that, I mean, I relate that to like the idea of colonialism or idea of like, you know, you having to take on another identity or a body of another person or the manners of another person. So the meat at that point had a lot to do with that reference and that particular period being very important in that whole process, in terms of colonialism and everything.
So that's why Victoria, because she was like the queen of the colonial empire?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I tend to work with women and like kind of female archetypes, I guess, like throughout, all the series and bodies of work that I do. And I think that was like one archetype that I was attracted to at the time.
All right, and then so the ages of 50 to 70, that was just because you conceived Queen Victoria in that age?
Well, yeah, because I didn't know. I guess it was more, I think that, I do like working with, especially for portraiture, I do like working with people that are of older age. I tend to take, because I think that I do like the traces of time sort of, and the facial expression that sits into the face, because I feel like a young person's just like a blank slate, like you could do all kinds of things with it, and there isn't like a real expression, other than just like a blank stare or something, and it's just been so overly used in our like sort of culture today that I'm not, attracted to shoot anybody that's around my age, really, But I think with the older women, I was really attracted to their faces because of the expressions. They were like just sort of so set in the faces, And the garments that I do also like, are sort of meant to reflect on those expressions. So I take like the process is I take a Polaroid first, and then I sort of like study the face or the facial expression, then I create the garment after that. So they're not so much like modeling the garments, but the garments are sort of made for them, and they're just like one thing, sort of. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I still don't understand why the Queen Victoria, what's the reference to her?
Well, I guess, yeah. It's just I was in England, and that was just one thing that stuck in my head the most, I think. I was 17 when I moved there from Turkey, and it's just like a very homogeneous sort of a culture that I found. And, her image is like everywhere if you, on the money and, just about everything. And I think it's fascinating that it's a female, actually, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Ms. Gee. The first series and the second series, you were using garments made of meat, but the first one was with models from the UK and the US, and the second one from Brazil.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you observed the interaction of the models with the garments. So can you explain us what kind of differences you have seen?
I think the differences that I've seen, you mean between different models in different countries, and like their reactions to the whole, I think it was the same. I don't think that there were a lot of differences, really, because I think it comes to like basic kind of human fundamentals of like, how do you feel wearing a meat dress? I think it's the same for like everybody. I don't think it's different. Yeah, it's not like people in Brazil walk around in meat suits or, anything like that. Culturally, there are, meat has like a different significance, like as I mentioned, like in, Candomblé religion, for instance. And so it isn't something like so foreign in that sense, but nobody really, like walks around in a meat suit. So it was, I think, just, I imagine it to be the same experience for everybody. Yeah. And me likewise, like for me, it was the same thing to work with women from Brazil or to work with women from England, like because I was still photographing these people that I didn't know. I was still photographing people of a different culture for me. So I think that as far as my interactions go, it was like about the same also. Yeah. Oh, it's just the casting process was different. Not so much the shooting of the models, but I think the casting was different. I think I think that there are a lot of like preconceptions as far as and the age of internet. I think is just make things like really crazy because a lot of women were just kind of like, oh my God, are you gonna like put my picture on the net, or what kind of where is this gonna go? Like, are we gonna be naked? There were a lot of like things, but Turkey's a Muslim country, so it's like there also comes with like a whole set of ideas about like, you know, women and what they think they should or shouldn't be doing and stuff like that, you know. Yeah.
Did they model for free?
Sorry?
Did they model for free?
No, I pay all the models that I've ever worked with. Even when I was in school, I paid them. But I don't think that anybody that does this really does it for money. I think it's really, because you can't, you know, no matter how much money you offer, I mean, I don't think that anybody, if they don't want to be in a meat suit or they don't want to, you know, they don't trust themselves to be in that situation, because it's quite vulnerable to be in a place where you're being photographed and you have to work with the, you know, work with the photographer. So I think it's quite, you know, quite a challenge, like, no matter who you are. And so for them to, like, commit to that and do that, you know, I think, you know, they wanted to be a part of it. I don't think the money was, you know, had a lot to do with it, but I think it helps, you know, every once in a while. I mean, if, you know, someone's a farmer or whatever, and, you know, you give them, I think it's just as a courtesy, you know, like a day's job or whatever, you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hi. It occurred to me when you were mentioning the transition from Turkey to England that maybe, I mean, I'm not that familiar with Turkish culture, but perhaps there isn't an equivalent to the Queen of England in Turkey or a Margaret Thatcher character. Is the position of women different in that regard? Are women perhaps a little more anonymous in Turkey?
I think, I mean, the older version of that is probably like the Mother Goddess or something like that, you know? I mean, where females were more, I think, just like, I think, perceived in a completely different light, you know, than what they are today. I think, I mean, I don't know, we can discuss, like, women in Turkey, like, whole night. So... I think about it a lot. I mean, obviously, because I do work with a lot of women, and like I go back to Turkey quite often. And I mean, recently I've been like really fascinated by this one belly dancer that I wanted to do a project with, for instance. And I'm like watching her like interviews and stuff like that, just on the internet, and just things that she's been saying, I think reflects so much about like the male dominant kind of, you know, culture, you know, the culture that we have. But I think it's also the same here. It's just that what women do to themselves and how they position themselves in the society is like a little different in both countries, like both in the US and Turkey. But at the same time, you know, how they're treated and how they're valued, I think it's just about the same. You know, so, I mean, I don't think that it's too different. Like, I think that it's just like a global thing, really. Yeah.
Is that a real snake on the picture?
No.
What is it?
It's a fake snake, like a toy.
It just scared me. And then while you were in Brazil, how'd you get around the language barrier?
Well, because I had somebody helping me. He spoke Portuguese. Because I was in a residency, like an artist residency, and so they gave me an assistant to help me speak to the women, and he was able to explain everybody what I was working on and what I wanted to do.
So it wasn't that hard to like cast, because then you had somebody translating for you?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
How much of with the individual shoot do you have preconceived of what they're going to wear and how you're going to position these things in advance, or how much is it kind of a collaboration? How long do these shoots? How long do they take? And I mean, how much do you know in advance? And
well, basically, I mean, I think that all of them are a collaboration, like, first of all, because I do have my ideas of what I want to do, and obviously the visual composition of the whole thing, you know, I do think about it beforehand. But once the model gets there, then I think it's just, like, you just have to, sometimes, for instance, in the meat dresses, like, I didn't get a chance to do, like, fittings or anything like that, so it was a matter of them really showing up and then me working on them. That's why I find the whole thing very performative, because it's really, you know, it all, like, comes together at that moment, you know. And then, yeah, I feel like photography is just a part of documenting that. But a shoot, I mean, practically speaking, takes about 3 hours, like, you know, putting on the garment or putting on the makeup or whatever it is I'm doing. I can't really make them take, you know, very long you know, because the model gets tired, and it's just there has to be a certain amount of concentration, you know, that they have to have and I have to have, and that can only last so long, you know. So in order to keep that, it's just you just have to keep it, I think, as short as possible. And then if it doesn't work out, then I shoot it again, you know, another day with another model or with the same model, yeah. But I do think that it's collaborative. Like no matter what, I think that it's never just me, you know, just doing it. It has a lot to do with them as well, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, how do the models feel once they see the picture?
I don't know. I think it's different for every model. I think some of them really like it, and some of them, I don't know how they. I mean, I have a model here. Maybe she can speak for it. I'm not sure. Not to point it at you, Mariah, but I mean, I think that some people think. I think that, you know, women tend to be very, like, critical, you know, self-critical. I think that even if you're like Naomi Campbell, you might still not like an image of yourself or like a picture of yourself. Like, it really doesn't, you know, matter, like, you know, who you shoot with or, you know, what kind of shoot it is. I think it's always different to look at your picture, you know, in that light. But as an artwork, I think a lot of them do see it as an artwork, and they appreciate, and I think they like it. Some of them I see their faces when they see the image, and I had a, you know, sense that they were quite pleased. And some of them I'm not too sure, but I think that's just how it goes. Yes, no, you were great. I know.
When you were saying that you had inspiration from like the goddess, is that like a reference to the Venus of like Willendorf, that statue? Because the body type.
Yeah, Venus of Willendorf is one of the statuettes that I was looking at. But I mean, that's only one of the like pre-Neolithic sort of mother goddess statues that I did research. And I mean, primarily, I guess my like fascination was with like Hajilar area. There's like a whole area of like excavation and you know, figurines that are very much like Venus of Willendorf that's been excavated in that particular area in Turkey, and you know, with like very sort of large breasts, hips, and very voluptuous sort of figures. Yeah, so that's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah, I immediately thought of that when I saw it, and then after you said it, I was like, oh, that has to be one of them, like the Venus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I forgot the name of the series, the one before this one.
I don't need it, I'm kind of loud. Okay. I was wondering if it has any reference to Zentai. I don't know if you're familiar with the term.
I'm
you know, the Zentai fetish, like what Japanese, like there's a fetish actually towards, like, of women wearing these like covered dresses in Japan and like having sex with them.
Exactly.
So is there an erotic connotation in that series at all, or no?
No. Because, I mean, I found out about it after I shot the series, and I think somebody put a blog, like, some blogger wrote about it and said that, like, it was similar to Zentai suits and stuff, and that's how I found out about Zentai. But beforehand, I had no clue. And a lot of people also think about it, like, look at the work in the light of, like, S&M and that kind of practice. I mean, I don't think that wasn't something that was in my head when I was shooting it, you know, or when I was working with the process of it, because like I said, in terms of latex suits and stuff, I really wanted to use them because, I mean, it's really ironic, actually, but I was really trying to get these textures, like as I was researching in the statuettes and stuff, like, you know, gold or whatever stone I was looking at, you know, and just looking at fabrics to see how I could actually make that, you know, make it look like they were made out of that stuff. So that's how I came about, like, you know, okay, I have to cover the face. First of all, I wanted to cover the face because I didn't want any expression to, like, interfere, because I felt like people were immediately going to look at the face and just try to read an expression and see the face, you know. So it wasn't going to do what I was trying to do. So then that's when the idea of eliminating the face came about, and the only way to do it was to cover it. And then the only way to really show the body was to make tight jumpsuits, and so that's how the whole thing, you know, that's how I put it together. Yeah, but it didn't really come from like fetish and S&M. No. Yeah.
Did you ever have any photo shoots for like either any of the series that didn't work out and then didn't make it into your series? Like
yes, I mean tons of them basically, like because the first series that I worked in, Perishables, for instance, took me about 3 years. So during those 3 years, I did shoot a lot of women and maybe over 50, and I've used only 16 images. I mean, it's full of like. You know, because I mean, I keep shooting, you know, because some things, like I said, when the model shows up, it works out really well, and sometimes it doesn't. But you have to keep trying, and that's the only way you find out, you know. It's like, it's not anything that, you know, it's not like you're a painter, like you're in the studio and working with a black canvas on your own. It's like, you know, you're interacting with another person, and sometimes either something with the garment or something with the background or just technically something with the photograph doesn't work out. So it's a matter of, you know, just keep working, and then, you know, and I edit the images. But like Mother Goddess series, that was, you know, shot about like, I mean, it took me about like maybe 2 years, you know, to arrive to that like jumpsuit. I mean, that's how long it took, really. So I just keep, you know, I do the shoots, and then I keep working. Sometimes I shoot the model, and then I get an idea like, this is what I should have really done. So then I call her again. And yeah. Thank you. Somebody over here.
You explained earlier that you, in the first series, that you didn't really rely on photography as a medium for the as part of the your work. And,
yes.
And now we can clearly see that the photography has become a focus of it. And I'm just curious, what sort of what's your thought, like how important it is, the photography, like the medium that you're using is to your artwork, and perhaps why not use, like, say, video, or are these images just meant to be like one-dimensional?
Yes.
Or
I mean, I think I've actually started experimenting with video. I've just, but I mean, I've always, not always, but often had like a camera running throughout the shoots as well, just for documentation purposes and stuff, like a video camera, just to like have it for my own archive. But I think I did like the still image, the frame, because like I said, when you look at an image like this, for instance, you're not quite sure of the medium anyway, actually. Like, you're not sure if it's a painting, if it's a sculpture, if it's a photograph of a sculpture, because it could be a lot of things, right? And I like that point in which you can't really tell what it really belongs to. I mean, I think that obviously, like, if it's in a gallery and if it's framed, like, you do see, like, it's a photograph and that's how it's, you know, being presented, but you're not still quite sure of it, I think, you know, in terms of the process of it, like, is it a documentation or something? Is it like, you know, like I said, a statue that's been photographed? So I like that place, I think, with photograph. That's where I like, that's what I like, I mean, in terms of that medium. But I do want to experiment with video. Do want to also experiment with people moving, like dance, you know, so it's not like a still, because sometimes I look at the the frames, the film, you know, and frame by frame I can see the subject moving, and it's really interesting to see that. But of course I have to pick one image, you know, out of that whole, you know, whole series, and so so I do, you know, I do want to experiment with dance, movement, and video, but I think not yet. Not, you know, yeah, till I really find a place where I'm comfortable with it, that I, you know, I mean, I'm experimenting with it, but I'm not quite showing it, you know, at the moment.
And then the second question was, the first series of images back to, they were just like simply shot on white seamless,
yes,
or white background, and then when you went to Bahia, it was on black, and now you're, it's obvious that you started like playing with textures and textiles.
Yes.
How do you feel like that pertains to the image, like with the subject? Like, you were focusing on the meat dresses before, and now for the viewer, the image is both the subject and the backdrop. You know, so the images of the women with, you know, that when they're bound. From Turkey, that you play with carpet and you play with like different like fabrics, and here you're choosing specific colors to complement skin tones, and you're using props. I mean, forgive me for using that word, but you're using the snake. And how do you think that's developing your?
I mean, I think that as far as the meat dress is concerned, like meat, I mean, I think that they're the same thing as like the snake for me. They don't function differently, you know, because I think that they're all part of like one image, you know, because they're not, you know, it's not like I'm making dresses like, you know, as like a fashion designer would make or something like that, you know, so they don't exist by themselves. I mean, they still have to be, sometimes I saw the model into the costume or whatever it is that I'm doing, you know, and I think like painting them with latex isn't any different than like a placenta dress, you know. I mean, there's more work, I guess, that goes into making, you know, like the dress or whatever, but that's still to create that one single like composition that you look at the end of the day, that one portrait, you know. So I think it serves, I think they both serve. It's very like painterly, actually, if you think about the process of it all, like it's almost like very similar to painting to me, you know, photographing that way, like with the Maria series and Perishables series, using daylight and strobes. You know, it's almost like painting sort of with light kind of idea, maybe. And I think, I mean, I see the same even in this image as it, you know, as we're looking at it. I think, you know, even with the makeup, because I wanted the body to look like it was made out of clay. So the way that I applied, you know, more makeup in certain areas, less in others, the way that the light lights it, and however way it reflects it, it's seamless. I think it's all to compose like this one image. Is that getting to your question, or, yeah? Do you have a third question? Okay. Yes.
The ones in Brazil, so they were a continuation of the Imperishable, or was that a slightly different theme?
I mean, I see it as I guess all the series are a continuation of the one that came before, but I mean, as far as the process being so similar, yes, it was a continuation of the first series. Yeah.
And the Venus ones with the clothing then, so those were quite a work, right, to actually make them. They're custom made to that particular form of that particular person, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of preparation and work before the final shot on that.
Exactly, yes. Yes, I mean, that's why it's not, I mean, my work isn't so, like, I mean, I do take the photographs and they do happen in like a studio sort of a setting and environment, but I mean, the process that goes along with it is like basically 90% of the work. I mean, from the research of it to the research of the materials that I use in the photographs, making the garments, you know, figuring out the textures and stuff to like compose the image, you know, and finding the models. This is all, you know, that's the process, basically. That's really the work, you know, and then this is like sort of like the 10% that you know just happens in the studio. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tip of the iceberg. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm gonna say yes, me.
Yes.
Can I ask you like how you would like to display your work, or how big it is?
How big is it? I mean, these are basically they're just you know they're photographs. The Perishables and Maria series are 30 by 40 inches. The prints. And I like that size because it's not quite life size, but it's just a little bit smaller. And I do like that sort of confrontational almost relationship when, you know, the viewer goes into a gallery or a museum that they just kind of face. You know, I didn't want to print them smaller for that reason. And these are, I think, about like 40 by 50 inches. So they're quite big. These are a little bigger than life size, actually, yeah. Yeah, because I really wanted them to look, you know, like I mentioned, sculptural, so I really like that scale.
Yeah, just wondering, like, it's like life size or like bigger than life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else? What's the snake about? The snake is referring to like the serpent goddess, the idea of the serpent goddess, yeah. Yeah, which was used a lot in like, as I mentioned, in little statuettes and in Mayan culture, in Turkish as well. Mm-hmm.
Do you regard like your images after the whole production and like pre-production as objects because you like to look at things more so in like an artistic manner and not just see them as like a one-dimensional like object after it's done? You know how most people, performance and like the photo as an asset.
Yeah, can you speak a little louder? Or maybe the mic is on. Is the microphone on?
Woo. Okay. Do you regard your images after they're printed and done as an object, more so than just an image of printed on paper? Because all of like your pre-production up to it has made it seem more than just like the image itself, but what happened prior and how it reads as like either a sculpture or a painting sort of thing.
I mean, I think that, well, it depends on the context in which it's shown and published, obviously. I mean, which is like one way, you know, an artwork gets out in the world today, right? Like, you either see it published in a magazine or a book, or you see it online, or you see it on like a screen of an iPhone. I mean, I think that that's the beauty of a photograph. It's like, you know, it can function in so many levels and just like have all these, you know, other, I mean, the way that I ideally like to show it is to, I mean, for instance, for this particular series, I was thinking, and it's the way that it's been shown, like it was shown in Düsseldorf recently. And it's almost like you go into a museum, like an archaeological museum, and see all these like artifacts that are of like different scale, you know. So I really just, you know, just almost like install the works, you know, the photographs, as though you were kind of maybe in an archaeological setting or a museum or something like that, without making it like, you know, corny, like without putting like things around it or anything, just like really neatly. But that's kind of the sensation, the idea that I wanted people to get. Is that kind of what you're asking? Yeah, but I mean, if somebody looks at your work, like the first time that they're seeing it, they look at it on an iPhone. I mean, that's also like one way of, you know, I mean, of them seeing it. Like, you can't do anything about, you know, you can't really always like, you know, create that atmosphere of an exhibition or, you know, however way you want to show it. One more. Over here.
How do you feel about commercial work, considering your intensive process? Or do you not care for it at all?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I did some collaborations with like brands, and where I was asked, I mean, especially like for this one magazine called Garage, I did 2 pieces for them. One was with Missoni and the other one was like Chanel, and it was more like they really wanted me to do something that was like kind of like, you know, artwork. But it's so difficult to do that kind of work. And, you know, when you have this, you know, when you're working on a project for 2 years and they're asking you to do something in like 2 days, or they're calling certain garments and certain models to be there, like the makeup or whatever, you know, it's just so hard for me and very artificial for me to work that way. So I don't do it. I try to avoid it as much as I can. But sometimes, you know, if it's really interesting to me somehow, like, I do it, you know, but I've only done 2 so far because of that reason. Because a lot of people, I think especially after Perishables series, were really interested in how the whole series looked like fashion photography, you know, and the whole process. I think like a lot of people who work, and part of my background's in fashion too, so a lot of people who are in fashion, like, I think really kind of responded to the process of it, like casting and, you know, the garments and all of that stuff, because it's very similar to how a fashion shoot happens, except, you know, my work, it took like 3 years to put together, like the series, and the fashion shoot is just like, you know, like a day, basically. You have a day to make it.
So you don't prefer it, you don't make it a priority as you identify yourself as a fine artist?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fine artist. I don't shoot commercial at all. I've only done 2 projects.
I did think of Missoni though, with the chicken feet. They had a textile made out of shredded feet.
They really did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That sounds, I don't know, weird. But I did a piece. No, I mean, I did a piece with them, and it worked out really well. It's on the first issue of like Garage magazine, and they sent me the fabrics, and I made jumpsuits very much like Mother Goddess series, and it worked out really well. But like I said, I mean, it's not like the whole process isn't anything that is similar to mine. Yeah.
And did you also find your education at Cooper Union similar to CSM?
Similar to what?
To
St. Martin's? Yeah. No, very different.
In what ways?
First of all, it's like 2 different like continents and countries, and so very different in terms of this, you know, the way that the whole education system is real different in England.
Well, I've also similarly went to CSM for Women's Wear before transferring here, so I was curious to know how Cooper was.
I mean, Cooper after St. Martin's was really difficult for me, because at St. Martin's it was like, first of all, I was studying fashion, but also I was, I think because I was studying fashion and because they were very famous for that particular program,
right.
you know, they had a lot of international students and older students. So everybody, I was like the youngest one there, and then I came here and it was more like people who graduated from high school. It was very different, you know. And very structured here, you know, you had to take classes and credits and stuff. That wasn't something that, you know, I was used to, like, because I was just used to giving briefs and just working on them,
I wasn't even aware that Cooper had, because I think I looked into it a bit, that they had, do they have a specific bachelor's program for photography?
No, it's like,
more
you choose like different classes. It's a, you know, Bachelor of Fine Arts, and you choose sculpture or you know, whatever.
But you can tailor it to your interest.
What?
You can tailor it to your interest?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
I'd like to ask a question from your model there. I don't know if you want to. Just curious how you thought about this originally when it was presented to you, how you preconceived what your idea was, what it was, and then why you're doing it, and then when it was finished, what you thought of it. And then just a quick question for you. You shoot film or digital?
The first two series I shot film, and then it got really like complicated and difficult for me, so I switched to the same camera, but I got a phase back, and so I shoot digital now. It's just more easier for my process, because I travel a lot, and it's so hard to carry film with you everywhere you go. Find, you know, consistent processing everywhere you travel. It was just so difficult.
So but it's a big format camera then?
Yeah, it's a medium format, Mamiya. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I guess Maria wants to answer. And you have a question? No, you don't. Okay. So I guess, are you gonna?
To answer your question, when I met Pinar and she explained to me what her vision was for the project, I was quite excited about it. And I thought, yeah, why not?
Which one were you at?
Well, you're looking at me right now.
No, is this it? No, this is not you, Maria. No, hold on. You're this one. That was Kwanja. This is you. This is you.
Yeah, you're looking at me. When she told me about it, I thought it was really great. And she asked me, you know, would I feel uncomfortable? I didn't feel uncomfortable about any of this. When she got to the latex part, I'm like, oh, okay. I said, okay, yeah, I've worked with latex before. I'm an artist, so I said, fine, let's go for it. And it was really, I really liked working with her. I mean, I love her artwork, and I was quite impressed. So I really liked the way it came out. And what I see is exactly what I expected to see. And I'm very pleased with it. And I would work with her again. And I would urge anyone who wants to work with her. She's great.
I have another question. Would you consider, I don't remember even you said that in the lecture, like, would you consider a male model?
I mean,
not me. I mean, like
I mean, I worked with a male model before, but it didn't. I mean, it didn't fit in any of the series that I was working with, like just conceptually, you know. And I find it easy to work with a male model, but it just didn't fit into anything that I was working.
Yeah, what do you mean by like not fitting the conceptually?
Because I mean, it's like, for instance, if I yeah, I mean, yeah, like Fertility Goddess's female body. I think that I think my work's been about female archetypes for a while now, and be it like, you know, Ida, like the series with the grapes, or Mother Goddess in this one. So I think that was just something that was just, maybe it could have been like a small piece, but I wasn't also fascinated with it because I didn't know what to do with a male body. I mean, I guess they do look like, I mean, for the younger male, like maybe Greek statuettes and stuff in that regard, but that's also not something that fascinated me. But I did a couple of things, you know, just to see if it would work out and fit in, yeah.
Thanks.
You've evidently found a model that you like, and she likes you. How long have you been working with one another?
With?
How
Who?
long have you and the model
Mariah.
been working with one another?
No, with Mariah, I mean, I did shoot her for this series in like 2010, right? Yeah. And that was it, actually. I mean, I shot her twice. No, I shot her twice to see, you know, because I did a shoot with her, and then it didn't quite work out, I think, and then we tried a couple of things. I was, you know, I was experimenting in the beginning just to see like how, you know, the whole thing, I mean, with the paint, how it would work, and with the background and stuff, and I called her for another shoot, and she said yes, and yeah. I mean, I've known her for 2 years, yeah, but I did 2 shoots together, yeah. I mean, you know, it's different with each model. I mean, not everybody's like Mariah, I have to say, because you do get people that aren't as into it or that aren't as, you know, interested sometimes. But, you know, every once in a while you meet somebody like Mariah who's wonderful and who thinks, you know, who really, I think, appreciates and understands it. I don't expect that from every model that I work with, you know, because I'm sure it's a different experience for everybody. Yeah. Anybody else? The lecture again? I think you should give him the tape. Yeah. My website is my full name, Pinar Yolacan, YOLACAN.net. And you can see all the works there. Is that okay?